out of Nero, and it does look like here early on this Lighthouse stage that we are going to be seeing Pharah in play from Nero.
Yeah, Nero versus Reach here. Though it does look like, yeah, as we start off here on Lighthouse, of course, Pharah does come out often. Neither team really running a long-range hit scan. It's going to be very ground-oriented here, as we do have Tracers coming out of Dalton and Kevster.
Meanwhile, we do have the air battle, though. Nero versus Reach over the top, and both Pharahs have gotten each other's attention. Reach gonna strike first. Nero looking to go back and forth. The ground war still in place as goes on, but neither team engaging too heavily right now. You can take a look at the team's health on both sides. You have a little bit of Tracer back and forth, but the Pharahs, so long as they're not hitting the ground, you don't see too much going on the ground here, and yet Toronto is gonna get first capture without the first kill. They do get Kevster, though, right towards the end.
Yeah, it's interesting how the Mercies on opposite ends are actually trying to prioritize their healing, while Shu is relying heavily upon keeping his tanks topped off. That's why we're seeing such a huge difference right now. Shu's at 66%, Dummy's only at 34 for the last night's leftovers. And so now, coming into this fight, Toronto Esports, they might have that Valkyrie. If they lose someone early, it'll make it much easier to go for that resurrection.
The bigger thing here for Toronto Esports, too, is that's a much better positioning for Nero. We talk about how Pharah v Pharah goes. It's better to be the defensive Pharah, where you have more options. You can lay in the damage onto the ground, which is what you're really seeing right now from Nero, where he's focusing on the ground war. Reach doing much the same, but Nero has a better positioning for it because LNL, they have to go through those choke points. But now, they've gotten their way through. They're starting to move onto the point here. It's going to be Guardian that they have under pressure, but here's Dalton coming off the flank. Pulse bomb in, connects on the Diva, going to be demeching Fried, and Dalton, plenty of room to work with here as he just explodes into the back.
That pulse bomb did so much damage, made it easy for him to clean up everyone else we saw. It got connected onto the Diva, but the splash damage was there. Speaking of splash damage, Reach now with the damage boosted rockets taking out two.
Reach still a threat here, still in the air, even as most of his team is resetting, and now he would like to get one pick off, as that would give the one-man advantage. The pick-offs he got a little bit earlier, not gonna be too much. Both teams gonna be back and forth at the same time, but now he's coming in from the back. Barrage ready, doesn't pull the trigger here just yet. Gonna wait for the barrier to go away, and now instead, turning his eye to the sky as the rest of the battle is going on the point. It's Nero. He's gonna find Ajax's Dalton again, unchecked from the back.
Dalton already coming alive in this match. We saw it take him a little while up against Nene in the last matchup, but now already Toronto Esports sitting at 90%. Pumple getting a nice staggered kill onto Fry. Now coming into this last fight. Last night's leftovers, they got very little to work with. Reach, who's been sitting on this barrage, it's so difficult to try and even get it off because he knows Nero is sitting and waiting on the opposite end.
Well, he's down to tank here early on. Now's the point where he has to do something to equalize. His team is down 2. He just drops it, grabs Dalton from the back, but he's going to end up falling right after Diva going into his face. It still might be enough to give some degree of hope here, but likely not, as Toronto Esports, respawns are coming back in. They have firm control of the point, even to the degree that Nero is now on the point, just clearing out the last people. A little bit of additional Pharah DPS. Overtime's going to tick down. It's going to be Toronto Esports with a relatively stress-free round to take here.
Yeah, Reach just was not able to have the same amount of impact on the match that Nero did on the opposite end. Even though he did come up with a good double, it just wasn't when his team needed it. It was after the fight was over, after everyone else from last night's leftovers were returning from spawn.
The thing that was bigger to me was just what Dalton was doing, where take the Pharahs out of it for a moment, focus on the ground war. Dalton was outplaying Kevster at every moment, where even though he wasn't directly killing Kevster a lot of the time, he was winning the Tracer duels to such a degree that Kevster had to back out, and then Dalton would just roll in, pick off 2 kills, and that would be it. So we're seeing what Dalton can do right now when not checked by someone like Nene.
Yep, Dalton already coming alive. He's going to be going onto that Widowmaker now for his team. So we'll see him now taking up the Widow versus Widow against Reach on the opposite end. Spots him out. He hits the headshots already. Toronto Esports on a good footing.
6v5 to open up this fight, working at a huge advantage, and more importantly, for Dalton, doesn't have to worry about the other Widowmaker here, at least for a little bit, and LNL, they don't even go in. They actually want to wait for Reach to come back in. They don't want to take the 6v5.
Yeah, the point hasn't unlocked yet. They don't need to apply pressure for it now. It has, and so that's why we're seeing LNL starting to push forward now from the inside track, but it's Dalton starting it all off. Decod getting taken down.
Decod gets Discord orbed, shot in the head, immediately eliminated. LNL wasn't particularly sneaky in how they went in. Toronto absolutely knew their approach, and they just punished it by blowing up Decod. That wasn't the engage LNL needed, and Toronto, again, off to a dominant start.
Reach hasn't had any opportunity to do anything so far with this Widowmaker. If you look, he's only passively built up 21% on his ultimate. Finally does tag someone, but still he is so far behind. Luckily, these aren't game-changing ultimates, but they are super useful.
And Dalton now looking for the early pickoff here in the back line, trying to keep his position hidden from Reach. And now that he's used the recon site, he's going to be looking for Reach, but he's also going to be looking to hit tanks when they have Discord Orb on him. So he's swapping his focus here, now looking to the right side, not able to get Kevster, so now there's an opportunity for LNL. They have the 6-on-5, Dalton is in for sight, about to go away, but while this is in progress, it's going to be Pumple diving into the back line, so even with the Widow not getting as much here, the front line of Toronto is enough.
And that's great, especially with Pumple going in with that Winston there. At the same time, Cruz was going for that resurrection onto Nero, and so he alleviates the pressure onto the Mercy, allowing her to get it off for free. But Kevster wins that TVT once again.
Kevster having a little bit more success this time around, but part of it might just be the part where your top Tracer player in Dalton is on Widowmaker. Nero, while he can sub in on Tracer, he's not quite as good on it as his other heroes. And now LNL, one of their last opportunities here, 73% to 0, moving on to the point, but Decod is blown up again. The playbook for Toronto Esports, blow up Decod.
Yep, Discord destroy. We've seen it time and again here now. Kevster has to use that recall here. He's trying to keep the point alive, but it backs away to get healed up from his team as it comes down to 90% for Toronto Esports. This is the last opportunity for LNL.
LNL looking for anything here in this fight. Pumple going to the side, and again, we see the tank front line of LNL moving in here. We'll see if they get support. Decod, Primal Rage to open things up here. Still plenty of room for LNL. Dalton in the back, Ajax going for the strike on the Widowmaker. The rarely seen Lucio v Widow play, but Dalton gonna handle it pretty well. Now gets him moved back in. No one on him in this situation, and LNL, they throw a self-destruct, just hoping for a bit of space, and yet Toronto is still stalling this out well, and Dalton more room to work with in the back.
Yeah, you've seen he's been holding a very aggressive stance with this Widowmaker, and why not? Shu takes out Reach. Pumple now finishing off Kessler as overtime ticks away. That's going to be Toronto Esports with an easy 2-0 victory here on Ilios.
Easy being the operative word, where oftentimes we can look at a game and go, well, there were opportunities, there were chances. Not so much here.
No, one of the things that I noticed right off the bat was the teams were exactly mirrored going into the first round of Ilios. And you guys talked about Mercy, the different Mercies choosing who to target and who to heal. How much of an influence do you think that had on how that first round played out?
I mean, overall, it's sort of the Pharah that's directing that there, where the Mercy is tethered to the Pharah, and it's more sort of, okay, is my Pharah in danger? I heal the Pharah. If the Pharah is okay and not a Pharah v Pharah, maybe you spread things out a little bit. Mostly, though, I'd say Nero had plenty of room to work with, so if he's not under pressure, that leaves his Mercy more room to go to other people. But overall, I would just say, like, Dalton was incredible the first round. Yeah,
and also, speaking about the Pharahs, looking at Reach holding his barrage the way he did, you guys had mentioned that was also like he couldn't find a spot to get in, and it wasn't even a matter so much of them not having skill. It's just being outskilled.
Well, yeah, that's always the worry, right? If you're trying to go in as a Pharah for the barrage, a successful barrage is one that you survive, or at least get 2 kills off of before you go down. There was no moment for Reach to actually find the window to get in there because, well, his team was constantly running back from spawn.
Exactly, and even when he did have windows, it's sort of, do I want to use a barrage when my team's already down 2 people? Probably not, and the key part, if you go back to Lighthouse, was that, look, Dalton was just ruining Kevster in the Tracer v Tracer battle just about every time, and also the focus fire of the tanks was so much better from the Toronto Esports side, where Decod spent more time in his spawn room than actually playing the video game.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, we're going to go ahead and go moving back into map selection. Hopefully they're going to have a little bit better of a time on this. Their footing might be a little bit stronger. We are going to Hollywood, and this was one that you guys wanted to see more play from last Sunday.
Personally, I just love Hollywood, period. I don't have a deeper philosophical reason for that. It's just, if you deny me Hollywood for an entire day, I'm going to be salty. It is one of the original maps in Overwatch, right up there with King's Row. Please, just hit the nostalgia side of me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Hollywood and Numbani plays, there's a playbook. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows how to take first. Hollywood is a bit more dynamic, and so I like to see Hollywood over Numbani just for that fact alone.
Look, let's not take my comments out of context here. I also love Numbani. It is the lab. It's where you can play a Torbjorn. Really, I'm just a variety as a spice of life type of guy.
Absolutely, but given last night's leftovers, their kind of play last week, how they just kind of got wiped by Toronto and Ilios, what are you guys needing to see from them? Like, what is a win condition for them in Hollywood?
I would say priority number one is protect Decod. You can't have your main tank getting wiped out as quickly as he was over the course of those 2 rounds. If your Winston is dying in the beginning of the fight within like the first 5 seconds, you're going to have a bad day. The second second point, which might not even be doable, is that Kevster needs to have a better game versus Dalton. If you're losing Tracer v Tracer consistently, well, it's probably not going to work out.
Yeah, I definitely agree at that point. And this is where Winstons do matter, especially if you're going for that point A take. If your Winston's going to be diving into Cafe from the offense there, he's going to need the backup from Fried on that Diva in particular. And also, Reach and Kevster, they need to have more impact so far early on in the fights. They need to get targets low so that once Decod does jump in, he's not trying to stay in the back line for 5 seconds trying to get a kill.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So a lot of this, it sounds like it's going to come down to not just kind of team management, but team positioning within the different roles.
Also, to a degree, hit more shots than the other team, especially when you start getting the Tracer v Tracer. It's like, outfight the other Tracer, or, you know, more importantly, go in at the same time with your Winston. Like,
and don't Lucio Widowmaker?
Yeah, so along those lines. I mean, hey, look, Lucios have done it before, but it's usually not the best look.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there. I mean, that was just like a last-ditch effort, right? He had to try to make something happen, especially when he's landing all of his shots. Is Dalton? So, yeah.
Do you guys have kind of an idea of like standout players on each of these teams?
Standout players. Well, so far, obviously, you take a look at the XL2 side. It's okay, or sorry, not XL2, but Toronto side, you obviously have Nero and Dalton that are sort of the DPS heroes to begin with, but also just their tank play has been very good as well. I mean, even though we focus on the DPS players, if you're positioned in such a way that you're blowing up the other tank early, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, Pumple and Guardian, the Korean tank duo coming in for them. It's interesting because Toronto is that split squad, right? 3 Westerners, 3 Korean. Luckily for them, now they have Cruz, who does speak some Korean to kind of translate in between, but I just feel like, of course, it's going to be a lot of calling, monkey, 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 kill the monkey, please.
Alrighty, well, let's see if they succeed in killing the monkey. Here we go to Hollywood.
I always love when they do the OWL comments.
Yeah, that's all it is. And everyone like, just wants to kill Winston.
Fantastic communications. It's the same word 5 times over, which actually makes sense in the degree of it's just urgency, right?
Urgency,
it's like,
yeah.
He's really low. Finish him off. That's why you're hearing that. But it's like, wow, this is great. Well, you know what also is great here, Jamerson? Hollywood, bright and sunny, up until the point where I've had enough of it, but it's going to be narrow, opening up here on this Pharah-based offense.
Yeah, on the defense, I mean, this is just a standard defense coming up from LNL. It's a proactive defense. They can react, but it's going to be very counter-dive-oriented. Reach now on that Soldier 76 to try and deal with Nero, excuse me. It's going to be his main priority, but Nero's going to be safe in the sky. He's got the pocket of Cruz.
He has the pocket, and now he's just laying the rockets into the cafe. The rest of Toronto going through the main gate. They're using this poke as an opportunity to move in more deeply into the point, and now it's a Tracer v Tracer down the back. Dalton versus Kevster. This is going to be key. Who ends up taking this here? Both Tracers committing. Both Tracers going to rewind. And Dalton actually pressured off a bit. Meanwhile, Toronto going for the cafe. And because they don't have the Tracer v Tracer win here just yet, they have to be a little bit more concerted. However, LNL has to get back onto the point. They've already given up about a tick for free. And we see Toronto going in deeper. And again, it's Decod who dies first.
Yeah, that was just great pressure point by Toronto Esports. We saw just before that first tick got taken that there were about 3 members of Toronto onto the point. At some point, LNL, they can't climb up forever, had to come out, and once they did, they got picked apart by Toronto Esports. Ajax finally answers back, but still, it's the man advantage now as Nero just uncontested in the sky. He's even on the point now, just cleaning up the members of LNL.
And this is what happens when you lose your tank early on. You lose control of the fight. You can't have your main tank dying first unless you extract something else from the other team in return. If you're going to be having Decod die in the beginning, and then you take down a Zenyatta or something in the back, okay. But if you just lose your main tank, there's a level of control you start losing in these fights.
Yeah, and we're talking about extracting. Dummy Going for a last-minute stall there, use that Transcendence. So now he is reset. Reach now, not able to do much with that Soldier 76. Wants to have the very high impact that Widowmakers can pull out here, but it's going to be difficult going up against Nero.
Nero right now, on the right side, going to be having Barrage set up here. Doesn't even necessarily have to go for it. It's up to LNL to set themselves up here at the top as Nero finds Reach over the top, drops the Barrage right after, and removes Decod from the fight. Sure, he might have died the dummy, but that was a worthwhile trade. Not only is it 2 members down, you've gotten rid of the main tank, and it's going to be very hard for LNL to even stall this payload.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Cruz didn't go for that resurrection there. He completely could have, but instead they're just going to wait it out. They don't risk anything at all. Now Dalton on the outside has already spotted out Decod, and Decod has to be careful. He's in the middle of the entirety of Toronto Esports.
This is where Decod's been living, and oftentimes he's on the edge. He Primal Rages early, so that was part of why he's being that aggressive, but look at the focus. He's in Primal Rage, and is he going to die right now? Down to 2 HP, still alive, but now firmly out of the fight. Meanwhile, Toronto, they can focus everything on the payload. Dummy down in the beginning. Dalton, room to work in the back. Got both supports, and now Toronto Esports, again, because they focused Decod out of the fight, room to work with, they should be able to take second.
Focused him out of the fight, caught him out of position. There were so many things going wrong there for last night's leftovers. They were just trying to regroup to go in for that contest, but instead, they give up the fight, they give up the point. It's Toronto Esports now with 4 minutes and 50 seconds to complete out Hollywood.
That is a blazingly fast time, and last night's leftovers, they don't really have a lot to go in here. If there's a moment for Kevster to have a big moment, it would be now. He has a pulse bomb up, just something to buy them time, but they have to face on the other side here. You look at Dalton over the top, gonna look for the pulse bomb, and LNL, they go in, but they don't even have everyone here, but it doesn't matter. The pulse bomb got on the shoe, the dive is successful, they get both supports, and that's what they need.
Yeah, both teams opting now for that Genji Tracer dive. Cruz still sitting on the Mercy, so we'll see if that helps them out if they try to go for a damage boosted blade, which can deal a lot of damage. If Dummy's not on point with that Transcendence, it do a lot of damage to his team.
Here in the back, we have the blade coming up from Nero. Nero pulled it out when he didn't really have a whole lot of support in the situation, has to back out, doesn't get too much, but again, Decod is focused down early. Decod tried to finish off Nero, overextends, and now Toronto has a 6v5 scenario where, again, they don't have to worry about a Winston. This frees up both your Tracer and Genji to dive into the back, and LNL, smartly, they're just backing out.
Yeah, many teams consider a blade for Transcendence an equal trade, but you know what's not an equal trade? When you lose your Winston through that Transcendence. So there seems to be some miscommunication going on. Dive comes out, but again, he's got the pocket of the Mercy, even Transcendence to keep himself safe. Shu now pressing forward with that.
Decod went in early in the fight, used Primal Rage, but then had the back out. The focus fire was on him, and now Kevster went in too deep, gets taken down. Reach, trying to equalize, a blade into the back, does get Shu, looks for a little bit more, chasing after Cruz and finishes him off. Reach has bought LNL more time.
Definitely. Oh, even the long-range right-click. Make that a quad kill. Reach, just cleaning up the members of Toronto Esports, finally giving his team some much-needed rest.
This is big for LNL. This is where they were going to be facing a time bank disadvantage that would be too harsh to come against, but now this is more reasonable to defend against, especially if they get one more fight.
2 minutes and 50 seconds now left for Toronto Esports. It's going to come down to Dalton in this fight. Nero can build up another blade, but here's the barrier now as the dive comes out from LNL. Decod already taking out Shu.
It's a much better dive from LNL. They were with Decod this time. They all focused on Shu. They got him at the beginning of the fight, and LNL, now they just get to casually reset, and now what was looking like a terrible defense might be quite good here in third.
Yeah, they're building up their bank, which is the most important part going into the next 2.5 minutes here. Transcendence along with the blade. They've even got both the bombs, the self-destruct and pulse bomb, while Toronto are on the back foot now.
Toronto looking for a way in, of course. A good way in is Nero's blade. Nero waiting for the opening here in the back line. You see the focus coming on the Decod, though. He's playing much more defensive. And here comes Blade. Is he going to get hit by the self-destruct? He does! He was not expecting that from Fried. He actually dove in after it was used, and it was such a weird part for a self-destruct. I think it just caught Nero off guard.
That was a really odd self-destruct. When I saw it come out, it went straight into a wall. I wasn't really sure what he was going for there, but hey, it might have just been the 200 IQ play up against Nero. Now, Toronto Esports, they're starting to run out of time. 1 minute and 39 seconds here. Now, I don't see what they can do to try and break this defense. The dive has really been strong coming up from LNL. Nero has swapped off. They're going to try and go for a bit more catch style.
Go for a counterplay here where you open up with the Valkyrie, let DCOD leap into you, take him out. That's been the play, although DCOD is seemingly adapted. Now he's holding further back. They're waiting out the Valkyrie. They're daring Toronto to move in right now, and Toronto right now isn't really doing that. DCOD, though, now diving in deep, has the Primal Rage, uses it in time. The focus fire onto Shu in the back. They're not going to make him force a Transcendence, though. It was good self-control. They take two. They punish the dive, and now Shu can come back in with the Transcendence to finish this out. Beautiful patience coming out there from Toronto.
That was a great kite back coming up from Toronto. It's so difficult to try and kill a Zenyatta who's getting pocketed by the Mercy now. Bride goes for the self-destruct just to get the reset onto his mech now as Dalton takes out Dummy. There's the res. Full fighting force as Nero pushes forward with that tactical visor.
Toronto, though, not to be contained. The attack visor in the back, doing the work necessary. Toronto now just a little bit away from moving this payload in, down to their final 29 seconds. It's important they get this with some time left on the clock, and they do. But one thing that's also worth knowing for LNL is that so long as they're able to bring the payload to the end, no matter what, they will get another attack because they were able to drain the clock below 1 minute.
Yeah, so it was a great reprioritization and a different approach coming out from LNL on their dive. It was much better coordinated once they got into this portion of the map, which is a bit more contained, right? There's less space for Toronto to run back. So I think the map geography really worked out for LNL at that point. But Toronto Esports having to switch gears, going from that Pharah onto the Genji and going for that proactive 2-2-2 dive style might have hindered them a bit.
Just a bit, and I think one thing that's also important to note here too for LNL is that we did see the beginnings of adjustment coming out for them here, right? Where we started out the map where DCOD was just getting focused every single time, and it did feel like LNL kind of keyed into that, started holding back a little bit more. Kevster, I don't think, is being as cavalier in challenging Dalton as heavily. So they finally hit a point of equilibrium on the third point where they said, okay, we're going to not go as crazy. We're going to make Toronto move into us because our counter dive has been very effective. And they were able to turn what could have been just an unwinnable scenario for them with, you know, a 4-minute time bank disadvantage to something that is quite reasonable here.
Yeah, and you know, that matchup between the Tracers was very important. We'll see whose Gunkata is going to reign supreme here as Dalton and Kevster will be facing off on the Tracers once again. It's going to be a dive coming out from last night's leftovers. This time, Toronto Esports is doing the same defense that they had run before, but this time it's Cruz running the Mercy for them. So we'll see. I mean, I like it. I like the Mercy over Lucio pick, especially on first for defense, because, well, where do you have to run away or run back from, right? You don't have that much space anyhow.
It lessens the importance of first picks, particularly in trade-out situations where maybe you lose one, but you take down 3. Then the Mercy can bring up that other person as opposed to being in a potential hole for 65 going to the next map. So we have LNL right now setting up for their offense. Gonna be Winston diving in, backed up by the Genji, and they already forced a bit of displacement, but Nero has the orb, able to readjust as Dalton comes in from the flank, finds reach, and the Toronto Esports position here, not too bad in the beginning. They've lost Pumple though, and this is something that they're gonna need to bring back up, but Toronto Esports rushing right after. Pumple's gonna be brought back up to the fray, and they hold.
Yeah, that was a great push coming out from LNL, really. I mean, they displaced the Soldier 76, made sure that, you know, he had to change position, didn't have the high ground anymore, but at that point, it was where the focus broke down. I believe they were trying to go after the Zenyatta, or the DPS were trying to go after Zenyatta, while DCOD was trying to go after Soldier 76, Nero. And from there, you need both the firepower of the Winston and your Tracer to try and finish someone off. Reach has already started it off, taking out Shu.
Shu down early on, DCOD falling through. They were able to get on Shu and get rid of D.Va in the same instance. It's 3 quick kills here from LNL. And this is looking very good for their offense, where Dalton, even though he got both supports, the problem is that you've lost so much of your team where, okay, these people don't have healing armor, but Nero, Tac Visor coming in, respawns are coming back out. This is not one here, despite the vengeance from DCOD, as Dalton continues to pick apart the backline.
Oh, wow, he is destroying them, but it also helped that Nero was in the back with that Soldier 76. Bought a lot of time, he had that biotic field, even though the tanks were just barreling in on him now. So they will be able to reestablish their defense, but LNL, they have taken 1 tick.
They very arguably should have gotten more the way that worked out, but it was Dalton getting the support line and then just working his way towards the back going, you guys have no healing, I'm Tracer, I'm just going to make this work. LNL now. Transcendence up, moving around the backside. Their ideal scenario here, engage with the Transcendence, especially if they can get an early pick, but now they're just kind of waiting in the back, waiting for their opportunity to move into here. Toronto holding back, more than willing to wait, but now the dive comes in and they get Nero immediately. It's a good early pickoff, and now Reach has the blade for this fight. He's not able to keep up the pressure. Nero's actually back in. The res comes in, but there's the blade.
That's great because Cruz went for that resurrection. They used the Transcendence to make sure he could get it off safely. Unfortunately, that was only one kill off the blade as Nero answers back once again, taking out Reach in reply.
Still a fight winnable on both sides here. Toronto Esports able to respond. Humble making space on the point as again, Nero gets up to the cafe. Not that much pressure on him. It's one Winston, but one Winston where it's Soldier Winston versus that. Decod's gonna fall, and Nero, again, plenty of room to work with on the top.
Yeah, it's this transition between targets. Once they get their first target, trying to find the second one where it seems like it's breaking down for LNL there. They had gotten the kill onto Nero. They try to force back more. Cruz was able to get the resurrection off and then actually fleed using that Valkyrie and got out of there safely. And then from there, LNL just had no clue where to go next. Now, once they do transition targets, you have to remember that the supports don't have the same mobility. So Dubby and Ajax are just left out in the open. Here they go.
They open with the barrier here. They're diving directly to back. Supports on their sights. They get Shu. Kevstar once more diving into this deep alleyway, and it's a 3-1 strike from LNL off the sound barrier. That was a time where they had to move in decisively, and they did. Toronto Esports now forcefully getting evicted from this point.
Yeah, luckily for them, Toronto Esports, they were holding in the back by the dumpsters there, and at some point you do run out of space to run back. That's why you saw Cruz backed up into a corner. Luckily he had his Guardian Angel try and fly away, but still, that just meant that the target selection afterwards, after your first pick, is that much easier. It's the guy in the corner.
All right, and now for LNL, this is where they have to make up time here. They lost a lot of their time bank just trying to get through first. Toronto Esports, even 2 defenses here in second, would be successful in giving them a huge advantage. So LNL, they don't have much room for error as, oh my goodness, Dalton got Reach of all people at the Pulse Bomb. That's gonna delay.
That is going to delay indeed. Decod has to be careful. He has to keep himself safe. It's Kevster actually.
Oh,
gonna get spotted out, chased down. Nero with the Helix Rockets takes him out. Gonna buy them another 10 seconds or so here for Toronto Esports as last night's leftovers have to reset.
The fade away rocket, and I think it's a little bit difficult here for LNL is that this is not the easiest way of getting a Transcendence Blade engaged. When you have people on top, you have to be more measured. Reach would love to combo with Dummy in that way right now, but it's sort of looking for the right scenario to pull out the blade. LNL, they're a little bit split, but Dalton dives too deep. Now the set to 65, this is where Reach can go, okay, I can be more aggressive. I can move in this situation, but he's gonna need an orb. There it is. Now the dive in comes in from Toronto Esports. LNL holding the situation. They transcend really early and they were spooked.
Well, yeah, you saw Decod. He was down to about 100 HP there, and they weren't able to get the orb onto him because it went on over to Reach. And so as the dive came out from Toronto Esports, it was just a reflex action coming out from Dummy. Now they're getting chased all the way to spawn. Pumple might fall. He's at 15 HP. He will, but still, last night's leftovers, they have to reset here. They have to make another approach. It's 1 minute and 5 seconds left for them.
There's a little bit of an overdive from Toronto, but I'm not really sure it matters. They're still going to be able to get back in time. What they do give up is a bit of positioning here, but this is still very rough.
Rough indeed, but they were able to force the high ground, and so now Toronto Esports, they have to leverage that away from them while it's Nero on the low ground. That is not where you want to be with his tactical visor, but he's still getting some free damage off. Now it's Kevster into the back.
Barrier coming in here from LNL, but they're not able to keep up Dummy. The dive still gets him in the end, but it's reaching Kevster, flanking from the side, striking in the back. Nero, though, speaking of flanks, he's on a flank of his own with Dalton. Tac visor up from the back, tearing through with his Tracer, and now it's Dalton. One of the last few survivors here. Both teams suffering losses, but Toronto still in a position of power as he's just trying to juke away from the Winston pressure of Decod. Respawns are coming in, but they've lost Guardian, and this still isn't bad for LNL.
They just lost Guardian, but LNL, their respawns are still running back from spawn now as we do have the regroup coming out from Toronto. They're going to exit from both left and right, try and split apart the forces. They're on to the point, contesting it now.
Contesting. Here comes the blade. Reach to the back, looking for the supports. Will he get Cruz? He does. Gets the Zenyatta as well. Shu gonna fall. It's Reach moving his way forward, cutting on through for LNL, and that Dragon Blade should be enough now for LNL to take second.
In overtime, they will clean up Toronto Esports, secure this add-on another minute and 30. Looks like it might be another overtime push for them, but this is a great way to start it off, getting this huge stagger onto Cruz.
Cruz wishing for death right now. And again, I can just imagine the words coming out of Cruz's mouth there, but he's going to fall, and LNL still alive.
LNL still alive now. Finally, the studio gates open. The payload on the move once again. 1 minute left for LNL here. It's gonna come down to Kevster. He's got the pulse bomb. It's been going back and forth between these two tracers now. Dalton's been connecting with his, so has Kevster now. It's all going to come down to this.
What a play. Kevster got Cruz in the beginning of the fight. Now again with that 65 advantage. Exactly what they needed. Reach falling through. He's gonna end up falling. Now both teams in on the point. Dalton gonna get forced back. LNL continues to move the payload here. And the defense of Toronto, they're just waiting for one final fight.
One final fight, and these are some strong tools to finish it off. Dragon Blade along with that self-destruct just to clear everyone off the point. They're going to start it off early with that Valkyrie out from Cruz.
They lost Pumple. Pumple's already gone. Now they have to rely on Nero, who's not going to have the tank support. Self-destruct into the back line. Dodges away to the left. Still has Blade up. Shu already down. If you're going to make a move, Nero, it's got to be now. LNL looking to extend the fight. The tanks are getting destroyed, and here comes Nero. Gets one. Looking for more. Nero dash resetting into the back. Has struck deeply, but his team has died all around him. It was a rough engage for Toronto Esports, and LNL, they're out of time, but it's in overtime as they look to get this final little bit in.
Yeah, the respawns are here for the defense. They got Shu with the Transcendence Cruise and now swapped off onto the Lucio. All the AoE healings. Dummy charges forward with his Trance, but there's really no one there to heal as his tank line's already gone now. Pulse Bomb stick, Dummy falls, and with that, Toronto Esports just left with 2 members to clean up. Last night's leftovers will fall. Toronto Esports now off to a 2-0 lead.
The importance of what we saw there was just the idea that it is so important to draw out time in the beginning of a matchup because overall, LNL played second and third better than what we saw from Toronto Esports, but Toronto Esports still ends up taking it because of the advantage they had from first.
It seemed like LNL had some inconsistencies in their team coordination. Like you said, their first showing in the very first part of that, when they were trying to take that first point, was kind of sloppy. And then once the second point happened, it all got cohesive, but like you said, it was kind of too little too late at that point. There was such a lead already with Toronto.
Yeah, and this is very often what happens where if you struggle to take first, where it's like, okay, good, we weren't full held. Oh no, we have now lost an enormous amount of time where Hollywood is not giving you tons of time through second and third. You need to get through first, arguably at the first 2 minutes, and not take as long as LNL did there.
I'm curious, is because I know Toronto is not boot camping yet. They're moving. They're trying to get all together. Is last night's leftovers? Are they all in one place working together, or are they all still remote?
I believe they're all remote, all playing from home for the most part. It's mostly the academy teams that have that kind of support where they do have that team house and everything. But Toronto are still working for that. I believe they at least have a center that they can play out of. In Toronto, but beyond that, I'm not too sure how many of them or how many of the Koreans might have made their way on over.
LNL is still in the same situation as Bye Week is, and some of the other teams, actually, even that do have academy support, do not necessarily have a boot camp set up. So from their point of view, they're just happy to get into it, right? Whereas only a few weeks ago that they were able to get through Contenders trials and actually get into the tournament as a whole, where I believe they'd be happy to say, hey guys, we're still looking for a sponsor, so if anyone would like to put them in a team house, I think they would be open to that.
I'm sure they would be very open to that. We have some really cool replay here of Genji. If you guys want to give a talk on this one.
And this is Reach just buying time, right? Where Reach was sort of back and forth in performance, but definitely had some very crucial blades to keep LNL in the game over the course of the series so far.
Yeah, by the end, they definitely did gel better, but before, during the dive, the most important part of the dive, after that first target, because that's the easiest, right? You spot out your target, everyone jumps onto them, is the next target. Everyone has to be able to reprioritize, reacquire their next one, and then they have to move seamlessly into it. That's where they were finding the difficulty. The first dive, you know, they do the damage, they split up the forces, and then from there they have to reacquire their next target, but they weren't doing that because, well, in Cafe, you have different ways to exit, right? Some can go towards the point, some can go back towards spawn, and they just weren't able to figure out where everyone was running.
So I guess, well, let's go. We're going to go ahead and take a break. But when we come back, I've got some questions kind of about what you guys are talking about as far as team transitioning in between these different counters and different kills. So let's go ahead and take a break. Come back. We got more action for you. We'll see you soon.